I'm Sam Mason, so I'm a member of Labour CND. I also happen to be a climate change activist and a policy officer. I work for PCS trade union covering sustainability and climate change, and have always been proud that our union is opposed to nuclear weapons and nuclear power as well, and the two are inextricably linked. So I just want to say more of a Labour CND hat on. However, just a bit about where we are with the climate talks and the significance of the discussion tonight in relation to the events taking place in Glasgow. I think the first thing is that the expectations for Glasgow, as somebody have put it, if they were low to start with, then you need to lower your expectations even more about what will come out, because the rhetoric of the Johnson government and the Bidens and everybody else will not match up to the action which we need to happen in terms of the measures to address climate change in any serious way. And I think what we're seeing now is a shift around all this discussion around net zero by 2050 is actually too late for the action needed. But I wanted to highlight one thing particularly, and I don't know if others have actually picked this up in how Boris Johnson has been presenting his contribution to the climate talks so far in his speech yesterday, that he's used this metaphor of being, 1 minute before midnight. And I think it's quite ironic that he's chosen that as a metaphor on climate change, because this is obviously relates to the doomsday clock, and the doomsday clock obviously looks at global risks, and one of the other global risks around that is, of course, the threat of nuclear weapons and what's happening geopolitically around that, which other speakers will come to in their contributions, I'm sure. The other thing that won't get discussed at the COP climate talks is the role of the military and the military carbon blueprint, as we're beginning to call it. These don't get accounted for in carbon accounting, and this very much sits outside, and it's quite difficult to know exactly what should be included in there. But of course, the whole idea of nuclear weapons is very central to a lot of this discussion for a number of reasons. One, because obviously just producing and operating nuclear weapons and everything around that has a whole carbon and climate impact. Obviously, if they were ever used, it would have the most devastating climate impact as well, with nuclear winters and the whole environmental degradation that was caused. There's also obviously the current uranium mining, whether that's for weapons or nuclear power sector as well, also has enormous environmental impact. And of course, many of these impacts are felt by those in the global south and Indigenous communities in Australia, for example, amongst other reasons. So there's lots of reasons why we need to consider this within the framing of climate change, but also the vast sums of money that are being spent on, for example, the UK nuclear deterrent is money that could actually be invested into the kind of actions that we need, public interventions to tackle the climate crisis. And if you think that the TEC has put out around a number of, I think it's about 68 billion that would be needed a year to invest in jobs, for example, within a new green economy, there's very much better things we could be doing with that money, not just for, clearly for the sake of humanity, and also creating the kind of peaceful future that we need. So what we really need to be investing in is a peace economy, not the kind of economy where we've seen in the budget just last week an increase in military expenditure, for example. So these kind of discussions are really critical within the climate talks, but we won't hear very much about them. And what they will focus on is market mechanisms and not real solutions that will actually protect people in the longer term. So I won't go on more about that, but I think it was just to give a flavour about when we listen to these discussions in the next couple of weeks, is really to try and get a sense of where this fits within the whole sort of paradigm of those discussions and the geopolitical situation as well, and what we really need to be investing in globally, and this whole agenda for peace if we really want a deal on climate for everybody.